Cathy Bilsky, the Quantum Leap, Let Light Unite show on Revolution Radio, and this is January, February, March, I count on my fingers, March 4th, 2017. Got a really good show for you tonight. I have James Robert Wright coming on, and we are going to talk about Freemasonry. Before I bring James on, I just want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in Fukushima. You know, where they're having that nuclear challenge? Well, you might as well say we all are, because it's been going on for over 5 years, unchecked, and they just keep having one disaster after another. So I wanted to read to you about what this Armstrong Economics has said about what's going on with the Fukushima nuclear catastrophe on the Pacific Ocean, and they point to a widespread censorship of scientific research. I mean, not only is there censorship on just the research, but you're not hearing about it at all, are you? So I quote, "I have just returned from visiting my friend, who's a senior cetacean biologist at one of the large West Coast universities. While there, he described an amazing situation to me that has alarmed me greatly. He said that research at his university has conclusively identified the complete or almost complete collapse of several dozen food chains within the Pacific Ocean, all within the last 36 months or so. Further, in unauthorized exchanges with the relevant departments and other coast universities, he learns that the numbers involved may well be more like hundreds of chain collapses in the same time frame as opposed to dozens. Finally, in talking with authoritarian figures in Vancouver, they apparently believe that the figure is likely closer to 1,000. As bad as all of this sounds, here's the real rub. Regarding these findings about food chain collapses, mutations, and injuries, my friend's university has instituted a policy that forbids them from publishing their findings, from discussing their findings on this subject, Fukushima, publicly or in private with other researchers outside their own campus, or finally from taking unauthorized radiation readings as part of their research. The penalties for violating these new rules are severe: loss of tenure, civil lawsuits for violation of contract, and potentially employment termination. And again, you can read that at the Armstrong Economics article. It's www.armstrongeconomics.com. You know, that really should scare the hell out of you guys. It does me. This is dire. And if you don't start doing your energy work, which is the only thing that's going to shift this, you all, we are really fucked. Yeah, I said the F word. Did that catch your attention? I certainly hope so. So, all I can tell you right now is do some energy work. Join me on my Facebook page, and we'll do more energy work with Fukushima. Catch me on Google+. I'm out there. You know, you can even look me up on YouTube, and I have some Fukushima prayers that you can listen to. We've got to come together on this, because the scientists aren't doing it, and Japan certainly is not making a whole lot of effort to fix this problem. And prayers do matter more than ever. Be careful when you go outside. Make sure you cleanse. Take extra vitamins, and take extra vitamins for your heart, because radiation goes to your heart. Be safe, and on those real rainy days, you might want to stay in for a while and, invest in a Geiger counter. So let's move on, and we're going to talk with James Robert Wright. How are you, James?
I'm good, Cathy. How are you?
Well, I'm managing to stay up at midnight. I'm used to Hawaii time, so if I was in Hawaii, it would only be 7 o'clock for me.
Yeah, I'm used to LA time myself, so I can totally sympathize.
I know, it's like, oh my God, I can make it till 1 o'clock in the morning. Oh, sure. You know, I saw you wrote a book, and it was about Freemasonry, very incredible, and when I saw that, I just said, oh my God, I had to have you on. So if I could read to people a little bit about your background, can I do that?
Yes, please.
All right, well, you're only 32. And
34.
32 degree. Ooh.
37, I'm sorry.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I didn't see that little circle up above there. It's midnight. Okay. So you are 32 degree and is a 34-year-old Knight Templar, resides presently in Los Angeles, and has held many positions in decoration in his Masonic Lodge, the Scottish Rite, among other secret societies. In keeping with multi-generational family customs, his ancestral roots are traced back to Spencer, Vere, Sinclair, and Saxe-Wittenberg families, making him Princess Diana's cousin and the great-grandson of half the Grandmasters of the historical Knights Templar. James has a background in entertainment, production, emergency dispatch, IT support, and then preceding all that, formerly employed as an envoy to the Supreme Council in Washington, D.C., with carte blanche access to Scottish Rite vaults and archives as special assistant to the Secretary General in Dallas, Texas. What does it mean when you're an envoy to the Supreme Council?
Well, it means they have their 33, no pun intended, not, officials, and then each of them have an assistant, so that was the role that I was in, and they're hand-selected.
Okay, let's go to A. What is a Freemason?
Well, in the broadest terms, it's like your round-the-corner neighborhood Blue Lodge, a lot like, say, Elks Lodge or Rotary Club. They do, the pancake breakfasts and things like that, and support children's hospitals, things like that. That's sort of the surface level, but as probably most of your listeners know, it's a pyramid all the way up. So the lower level Masons really have zero comprehension as to what goes on the steps above them on the pyramid. So that being said, your local, round-the-corner, everyday Masons tend to be really, really good guys with good intentions who just have either no understanding or don't want to believe the types of nefarious things that are very well known throughout the fraternity, to go on. So it's the world's oldest fraternity. It's sort of I take that back. The Knights Templar came long before them. So that's kind of what they turned into during the purge of 1307 when they were arrested and brought up on trumped-up charges because the King of France and Pope Gregory V, I think, owed them tremendous amounts of money, so it was easier to kill them than pay them, and that's where they went underground and came up with this concept of Freemasonry, which is what we now have today.
You were born into this, huh?
Oh, yes, very much so. It runs very deep in my family. About as far back as genealogy can be traced, and my genealogy is traced back into, the 3-digit years. So, I mean, we're talking pre the year 1000 AD and all of that, because it is true what they say. These bloodlines intermarry and sort of keep it in the aristocratic family, so to speak, and the current regime of Freemasonry definitely does not like acknowledging that, because a lot of them in the higher echelons are social climbers, and they don't have that genealogy, and so they would very much like to see that subject matter thrown in the garbage and forgotten about to sort of justify their own existence there and power there, when in fact, when you do a deep investigation of the actual rules and tenets and so forth of the fraternity, that was, once upon a time, a requirement. So that's definitely changed. However, the same theme applies even today, because for reasons that no one, including them, can explain, guys who originate of these bloodlines are drawn to it for reasons that they really can't explain. Call it maybe genetic memory, call it past life memories, who knows? I don't like to speculate, but there is definitely something of an esoteric, cosmic nature unfolding there with that.
Okay, my big question, and I'm really curious, what is it like to be brought up in a Masonic family?
Well, to be perfectly frank, it was hell. I had a terrible childhood. I mean, I never wanted for anything, because I'm from a very wealthy, aristocratic family in Texas and so forth, and so I pretty much grew up inside of, country clubs and all of that type thing. But that was in public. In private, it was a whole other issue. We're talking rampant alcoholism, drug abuse, emotional abuse, etc., etc. It was very volatile. It was very traumatic, and it's taken years of counseling to come to terms with it and to find the strength to speak out about it as I do now. And not only that, it was sort of like going out of the frying pan and into the fire. I cut ties with, well, I didn't cut ties, but I quit going around my family as much, as opposed to, like, say, living with them in the big family mansion there in Dallas, hoping that that would get me away from it. And in that, I found that, I can spend time around Freemasonry. Well, it was pretty much the same demon. It was the same toxicity, the same abusiveness, rampant sexual harassment, because I was openly gay, and they interpreted that as I was sort of like the in-house call boy, which goes against my morals. That's where my problem with them originally started, and that was why I chose to escape and blow the whistle and write the first book I wrote, called Freemasonry's Cult Abuses, which kind of detailed the process of being initiated and then what all went on in the office of the Supreme Council, the administrative arm of it, concerning me and the dubious characters that I was surrounded by on a daily basis.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do have a half-sister, but as far as growing up around my family in Dallas, I was an only child, so to speak.
Okay. What was it, the situation that actually made you snap and say, I can't do this anymore, and I'm writing a book? I'm exposing this.
rampant homophobia and emotional abuse and sexual harassment. And I was a basket case as a result, and I decided I couldn't take anymore, and my therapist at the time advised that I write it all out in like a journal format as an exercise in therapy, and then when words started to go around through various people that I was doing that, the situation came about of like, it all happened overnight. It's kind of, I really can't even explain it. It's like I got a book deal overnight, which immediately propelled me into Hollywood, started doing hundreds of shows. It blew up sky high. But the thing of it is I left them, or fled them rather, in August of 2010. The book was not published until January 1st, 2012. And they now tell the lie that, oh, we retaliate against you because you wrote this book. No, it's well documented that they retaliated against me that very day that I left. Like, how dare you leave? So, writing the book, I could have written it or could have not, and all the same things would have happened, probably, if not worse, if I didn't, because, like in the words of Julian Assange, the best way to protect yourself is to go public. So that was the course of action that I took.
When we were talking, you called Freemasonry, you define it as a cult. You want to expand on that?
Yes, it is. I've been watching lately Leah Remini's series on Scientology, and the parallels between the two are sobering, because you have a situation where it's frowned upon if you associate with anyone who is, quote, an anti-Mason. You're not allowed to have dealings with those people. You're not encouraged to read about Freemasonry on the internet. You're not encouraged to have social media. You're not encouraged to discuss, what is the quote from Masonic law, to criticize the fraternity publicly or privately. Notice the words or privately. So in other words, you can never go to your higher up and air a grievance, even if you got a really good one to bring to their attention. It doesn't matter. You can't say anything. And so when you leave, like Scientology, you are disconnected. So many friends I had, including relatives, they are no longer allowed to speak to me, which has been probably the most difficult part about the whole thing as it unfolded. And then, like the Scientologists, how they call you fair game. When my first book was published in 2012.
Well, what do you mean fair game?
Meaning, once you have been branded an enemy of the fraternity, you come under the most serious attack you can imagine. I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of guys who would follow me around, trolling me in public, on all forms of social media, saying things about me like I was a liar, I was a fraud, a charlatan, I have emotional issues, I'm just an attention seeker, even went so far as to call me the Antichrist, and all these type things. So, and what's interesting is I've dealt with so many radio hosts over the years now that there's been so many that have pointed out that in all my years of interviewing people on sensitive subjects, whistleblowers, whatever, never have I received an official letter from this institution saying the type of things that I just described. It's very bizarre behavior, like, you better not, it's intimidation. You better not have this person on. You better not talk to him. You better not interview him. He's a liar. He's just, okay, well, first things first, if I were a liar or stretching the truth even slightly, they would have sued me into the ground. So everything I've ever said about them is true. They know it, and I hold all the evidence, and I've shown that evidence to numerous journalists. I mean, at first they tried to say that I was making it all up. I'm not even a Mason. So then I started showing my diplomas and things. So, you know, it evolved past that, and still to this day they say things like, you know, I'm a pathological liar, that I'm just seeking to destroy the fraternity, basically what made them the maddest is when I called for the removal of their tax exemption status as a 501c3 religious institution. Because
what?
on the record publicly, on the record publicly, they will say, and I quote, "We are not a religion." Okay, then who is the liar here, the Masons or the Masons? Because they say they're not a religion, yet they claim religious tax exemption, which is why they are so wealthy. So, in my opinion, the government or the IRS needs to intervene and strip that away from them.
How many of the IRS is actually Masons?
Oh, probably a lot, just like Scientology. Again, how did they get it, you know? It's all about infiltration. When you want something, you infiltrate. That is how a cult operates.
How many people, would you look at the Masons and say they're equal to Skull and Bones?
I would, well, yes. Simple answer, yes. The Masons are sort of a recruitment ground for Skull and Bones. It could, because the Bonesmen, they tend to be legacies with a fraternity, and their fathers or grandfathers are almost always Freemasons as well. So the two are kind of a hand-in-hand situation.
Wow, I didn't know that. So you're being stalked.
Oh yeah, I've moved around so many times. I've lost count. In the past 5 years, I believe I have moved about 7 times.
Oh wow! How can you mentioned also that if the wives only knew what these men were doing, they wouldn't allow it. How can they be so naive?
Well, that would be your chief reason for all the secrecy about the lodge ritual, because it reads, and I'm not exaggerating this, if you read my new book, Freemasonry's Filthy Rituals, I published that for a reason, because if you read it, you will see that it almost reads like a gay version of a script for 50 Shades of Grey. All of this, oh yes, master, the worshipful master awaits your pleasure. It's very bondage sounding. And so that poses the question, why do these men spend more time in a closed, windowless room with other men reciting these things over and over than they do spending time with their wives? And if their wives knew about the ritual, it is my sincere belief that the entire fraternity would collapse overnight. That is the reason they want the secrecy. That is the reason I published the new book. Because in the new book, I spell it all out. Everything. Every bit of lodge ritual, from the oaths to the initiations to the standard business procedures, all of it. It's all in there. And, I'm sure that they're very upset about that, but that's too bad. That's sort of the final frontier of what they have left to hide, quoting them. And when you read this, you will definitely be shocked at what they say to each other. And may I point out that, you know, if I was to walk up to someone and say, I will kill you, that person could call the police and report a terroristic threat, and I would be picked up and booked on a felony. Now, in the oaths of Freemasonry, every single one, they threaten to kill you as a member. So, again, back to the subject, what is a cult? Okay, they are getting away with threatening all of their members with penalty of death if they step out of line. So how is this group not being investigated on terrorist threats?
Is it because the Masons are frigging everywhere? They're in the police department. They're in, you know, everywhere.
Largely, yeah. I mean, because with what all went on with me with the gang stalking, it got to a point where it escalated to an FBI case, and the agent in charge was not a Mason, and he called me and told me, I'm sorry, I'm having to drop this. I keep running into brick walls. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, I can't find any other support to pursue this case. So, yeah, judges, lawyers, politicians, law enforcement, so many of them are, and that's the nature of their power is in networking. Again, if the wives only knew what the ritual that I have now written out word for word, start to finish, in my new book, Freemasonry's Filthy Rituals, filthy is the best word I could think of, because the wives would sit there and go, why are you reading each other 50 Shades of Grey material in an all-male, you know, environment? It's weird.
But aren't most of the wives coming from Masonic families anyway?
I would say a certain percentage, but not really. Most, and I've met a lot of Masons in my years, and most of them, they have this attitude kind of like, oh, whatever, he's going to his lodge meeting, I'll see him later. You know, they're just very uninvolved and have not yet had a cause for alarm, you might say. But if they read my new book, they would freak out.
What was life, well, you know, you're being stalked, and how do you fear for your family? Is your family also being harassed?
They were. That's why, to use that Scientology word, disconnected, that is why they quit talking to me. I do have other family members scattered around the world that, again, have to do with this bloodline thing, but that's a situation that I'm not really prepared to go into a lot of detail about yet, because there's going to be some pretty damning information coming out on this very subject, and I don't want to prematurely jump the gun, because if I did, it could cause unintended consequences, and I don't want that to happen. But let's just say I'm very, very closely related with the British royal family, and I have to be very careful of what I say and do about that.
What about Hollywood? Isn't Hollywood a lot of Masons?
In my experience, no. I mean, in its golden days, yeah. But, like, the Masonic Lodge on Hollywood Boulevard is now the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio, so a lot of them have closed down. The old Scottish Rite building on Wilshire Boulevard is closed down and gone. So, you know, Californians, they kind of have an attitude like Freemasonry, oh, please. They don't really take it seriously on the West Coast. It's more the Deep South and East Coast where it's a very powerful epicenter of commerce for the fraternity.
Wow. Tell us some of the experiences as a Freemason.
Oh, well, I've got a million. We would be here all night. I mean, I met a lot of great guys, but again, I was disconnected from. They sent out an edict to all lodges in America saying, do not communicate with James Wright. I do have stragglers who support me here and there, who believe in what I'm doing because they too are fed up with it, but they're in a position, whoever they may be, that they don't feel like they want to bring that on to because they watch what's happened to me, and they don't want that to happen in their lives. And trust me, there's been some other Masons who have made some waves, and a lot worse has happened too. And again, that goes back to bloodlines, because I have such a pure dose of it that they kind of hold back a little bit from, like, say, the drastic measure of killing me or something, because that's kind of one of those rules with that. You know, you're not. There's a joke in the intelligence community called the Can't Be Killed Club. So basically, if you've got, like, royal blood, then they can get as mad as they want and do horrible things to you and stalk you and try to ruin your life as best as possible. But, you know, killing you would kind of be a cardinal sin in the realm of the fraternity.
Now, you also say that they're Luciferian.
They are everything. The higher you go in the degrees, you pray to the grand architect of the universe, the bright morning star that rises in the east. I'm sure most Christians will know that does mean Lucifer, and so yeah, it is a Luciferian doctrine, absolutely.
So what degree, because you said a lot of the people are at the lower levels they're not Luciferian. They don't understand, they're not part of that. How high do you have to get? To what degree does it start shifting?
Once you become a third-degree Master Mason in the Blue Lodge, that's when they start hounding you to join the Scottish Rite. And then once you do that, it's kind of a marathon, and then you're a 32nd, and then they start to go a little bit deeper into what they divulge to you. Now, there's always the York Rite, which ends in the degree of Knight Templar, but they don't like to push that because that's a Christian version of it, and you have to profess a belief in Christ and all that, and they kind of cringe with that here in the past few years. So there's definitely a concerted effort to try and dissolve and get rid of the York Rite, but the York Rite is very strong and alive and well in Europe, and they are quite angry with what's going on in America. And a friend of mine, Frater X, who's another outspoken Mason, he calls it the secret war inside Freemasonry, and he's absolutely right. It's these different factions fighting for who can be top dog and rule all of it, you know, so.
I love it when they infight.
Oh, they've always done it, but here in the past decade, it seems like it's getting out of control.
Why would you say out of control?
Just because a situation like this has never really happened in history, where the infighting is getting so chaotic and starting to show itself publicly. I mean, there's actually been some mainstream news articles about the anti-gay targeting and the racist targeting and the sexism and all that. And 50 years ago, that would have never happened because Masons and the mainstream media would have never allowed it to be published. So that is kind of changing. So their misdeeds are definitely becoming a little bit more well-known as time goes on. I've been an instrumental part in that. That's one of the reasons why they are so angry with me. Matter of fact, in my new book, Freemasonry's Filthy Rituals, I actually included their own documents with their handwriting and signatures and notarized seal and everything, discussing all the reasons why they are furious at me for going public. So all of that evidence is in there as well.
You want to talk about some of the things they do, which is in your book?
Well, yeah, like I already said, it's tremendous gang stalking, trolling. They will follow you wherever you go on the internet and make sure they say things that people will see, like, oh, you're a nut job, you're this, you're that, just use your imagination. They'll resort to profanity and even making up stories. It's really sick. And the whole point, kind of like when Scientologists do it, is to try and discredit the person telling the truth so that the hope is that people don't listen to them as much, but it's the same dubious cast of characters who are doing this stuff. They all come from the Scottish Rite, and it's interesting to note that the Scottish Rite, by definition, is not Freemasonry, but they've hijacked it and taken it over as a business enterprise, and that's how they're running it. And it's all about making money. And, again, like Scientology, here's another parallel. You could be a 33rd degree Mason. There's still levels above that. So it's all about chasing a carrot, more money, more money, more money, and where does it end? It never ends. You could be a Mason for 70 years, die in your 90s, and still not accumulate half the degrees that are out there to be had. And, every so often they'll just invent new ones. Oh, we found a new manuscript in the vault, and so now you need this one. And it's for all these reasons, this is why it is a cult. Because religions don't do that. Let's take Christianity, for example. You can go to any bookstore, buy a Bible, flip to the end, and read all the secrets and how it ends, right? But with Freemasonry, it's, oh, no, we need another $100, another $100. You need to take another degree, and we'll give you a little bit more information, and a little bit more, a little bit more. It's called a pyramid scheme.
Well, that's what Scientology does, doesn't it? It's pay to play?
It's the exact same thing, yes, absolutely.
In your book also, you also describe what symbols mean.
Yes, I made a point to not, in my new book, Filthy Rituals, I made a point to not only spell out the ritual word for word, which I also identify their secret cipher, which has no cover, no title on it that you can secretly buy by asking for it like a Barnes & Noble. So I explain their cipher, and then I write out all the ritual with that as a point of reference in case they try to call that into question of, oh, no, that's not it. No, he's got it wrong. No, when I was active, I was an expert in the authenticity of the Masonic ritual. So they would come to me and so is this right? How does this go? So, yeah, no, I can swear on a stack of Bibles that what I wrote in the new book is the absolute 100% verbatim ritual that is in use in all lodges worldwide today.
When you were growing up, like how some Christians will go to Bible school or, Catholics go to the Catholicism classes. Did you have to study when you were younger this stuff?
No, they forbid it. It's not until you turn 18 that they allow you to start, and then I myself did not get involved until I was 23 at the behest of my aunt, whose father was heavily into it. She was Eastern Star, so it was sort of like, enough time has passed. You need to go ahead and do this now.
Or what?
Or get out of my house.
That works.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, tell us more stories.
Yeah. One thing that they have succeeded in doing is I once had a good life. I had a nice house with a pool and 2 cars and everything going on for me when I worked in that administrative position at the Scottish Rite. And when all of that blew up, they did everything they could to ruin me financially. I had to spend what little money I have in savings just going on the run, surviving, eating, etc. I just had 7 very invasive oral surgeries because of teeth problems that began all the way back in 2010 when I was there. Of course, they wouldn't allow me any kind of dental insurance, even though I was working upwards of 90 hours a week. So it's just a very abusive work environment, and they don't do anything. Even though they got all these mega millions of dollars, they don't do anything for their small handful of employees, let alone the volunteer members who devote all of their spare time to it, and that's wrong. And Scientology, again, to draw another parallel with them, they do the same thing. And so, because I live in L.A., and the waiting list to see a dentist, it was a year and a half, it was to a point where I was going to end up dying. Like, I would be dead now. We would not be having this conversation because the infection had spread into my jawbone. So I had to come visit some distant relatives in Minnesota who are not at all involved with the fraternity, who can kind of, keep me safe and all that and keep a watchful eye out on me. And there was no waiting list here, so I've been able to get all of that taken care of, and I only have 2 procedures left, and I'll be back in L.A. in a month, thank God. So, but, this has all left me ruined, so much so that I'm broke. I now don't have a car. My car that I had in L.A. Mysteriously vanished. I tried to file, a theft report with the LAPD. They seemed completely uninterested in pursuing it, just like with my first publisher on the first book, New Falcon Publications. Come to find out, the CEO was a basketball coach at Los Angeles Community College. He went down in flames for a shower cam scandal with his athletes. So, these are the kind of people that you're dealing with. And I didn't know anything about this. I found out only too late. So I never saw a dime from the first book, even though it's set in the top 100 bestsellers under civil rights on Amazon for 4 years running. So everybody thinks that, I should be rolling in it, and they're right, I should be, but I'm broke. I eat ramen noodles half the time. I have no car. It's bad. And so I'm hoping and praying that with the publication of this new book, which I self-published, it's on iTunes, it's $9.99, and you cannot find, I'm not saying this because it's my book, I'm saying it because it's true. You cannot find a better source of information as to the ritual on Freemasonry in the world. This is the stuff that they go above and beyond to keep from the public, and I have written it all out from start to finish and given the real explanations as to the symbology, not the watered down, the all-seeing eye is the eye of God, and the G stands for geometry. No, I go into the actual Solomonic, Kabbalah, Luciferian doctrine of what it all really means after I write it all out.
I have to get back because you reminded me. What does it have to do with the Kabbalah?
The Sephiroth and the Tree of Life, they have a belief that there was the Garden of Eden before and after the fall. If you research the Golden Dawn material, which was a spin-off of Freemasonry, it goes into better detail than I could possibly explain about that. But basically, it's all about going through ritual to become the perfected man or Adam Kadmon, again. They believe that can be that sort of apotheosis can be achieved in life and possibly immortality. They all believe in the tales of Saint Germain and alchemy and that sort of thing, the elixir of life, if you will. So, personally, I've never met any who have achieved that, but that's neither here nor there. But I at least explain in the new book their thinking and the ritual, and hopefully that would give the reader a bit better idea of what these guys are really, really trying to accomplish and why they are so dead set on keeping it secret.
I've got an off-the-wall question. Have you ever looked up Trump's genealogy? You think he's a Mason?
Trump's genealogy, I know I am his, eighth cousin. It would take me a few minutes to pull it up. I can pull it up later and send it to you, but yes, I've heard it from a friend who's a Mason who said that he is in fact a 33rd. Yeah.
When I looked up Trump's genealogy just a little bit, and he's actually related through his Scottish lineage to Hillary.
Yeah, the McLeods. Yeah, well, that's the thing is you can always predict the outcome of a U.S. election based on who has the purest bloodline. And when Trump announced that he was going to run for office, I told everyone I knew in L.A., Trump's going to win. Of course, L.A. was Bernie territory. I worked on the Bernie campaign, and they were like, oh, you're crazy. That's not possible. Hillary would win before him. And I said, no, I've run all their genealogy. Bernie has none. He doesn't stand a chance, even though I've still worked on his campaign because I believed in it. Hillary has the next best chance, but Trump is going to win. He's got the highest dose of it. He is a Sinclair and McLeod.
I've heard that, and I believe that, too, and I've said that to people. Whoever has, the highest bloodline wins, and they go, oh, no. And it's like, give me a break. I mean, Charlemagne, a lot of our presidents are related to Charlemagne. Charlemagne that was the beginning of the First Reich. So all these guys
you're talking about the Merovingian line, and actually on the Charlemagne note, the ones who are going to be related to him as a great-grandparent, they're also going to go back into Octavian Caesar. So this is a Julio-Claudian bloodline we are talking about. Never mind the Middle Ages, never mind Constantine and the formation of the Vatican and everything. We are talking about Rome never died, and the Julio-Claudian dynasty is still running world politics.
Oh, that's interesting. Very fascinating. You're going to have to come back. You are just really fascinating to talk to.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a couple of years since I've done Revolution Radio. I love it. I have so many friends there, and I've always had such a good time. I'm sure some of them probably aren't around anymore because they moved away or taken other jobs or whatever, but I just adore talking to y'all. And
well, actually, this is UPRN Radio. Oops.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Revolution in the intro.
Oh, God. I hope not. That would have been oops. I could have done that. I do that occasionally.
Unless maybe you were saying, this is the Revolution. Maybe I misheard. So.
Well, it's on record. Well, what can I say? I could be busted or I may not be busted, but that is life.
Well, one thing you could do for me, I beg you, I beseech you to please do me this favor. Because like I said, they have ruined me financially. I'm trying to get my life back together, get a car, etc. I'm working on documentaries about activism, chemtrails, SB 22, all kinds of issues that we have going on in California, vaccines, I got to work with some of the filmmakers on Vax. That was a wonderful experience. So I've really taken a bad situation and tried to spin it into as good a one as possible to use my platform to help others. And so if you could please post the link to my iTunes. Unfortunately, that's the only way, because I'm a Mac user, and it kind of streamlines the process. So when I self-publish my new book, Freemasonry's Filthy Rituals, it's for sale on iBooks on iTunes. And for some reason, it's not coming up in the search, which, wonder why. But it is there, and it is available. So if you post the link, your listeners can get it. And then also, because I realize a lot of people out there are not Mac or Apple product users, I also have a GoFundMe page set up. It's GoFundMe.com/James Robert Wright, my name all spelled out. And I'll make a deal with your listeners if they donate, $10, or it would make my prayers come true if they could afford to donate more. But for the same price the book is on iTunes, I will be glad to email them the PDF version of the book so that they can read it on their Windows or Android device.
Well, I'm telling you, folks, if you really wanted to get a really good understanding about the Masons, it is in his book, and he's got so many details. It is not, he wasn't kidding. There's a lot of effort in this book, and I can see why they're a little pissed off at you.
A little. That's the understatement of the millennium, because nothing like this has ever happened before. And, when they dispatch their official spokespeople onto, like, the History Channel or Discovery, it's always Brent Morris or Art de Hoyos and all the top three guys that run the whole thing from the Supreme Council. They lie and lie and lie, and they'll say, oh, look, like I watched a program one time on CBS that, never before seen lodge ritual footage. It was a joke. It was a total farce. They just made it up as they went along. That is in no way. So, again, they were protecting secrets and lying to the public, saying, oh, look, here it is, nothing to see here. And it was farcical. It was something they just pulled right out of their rear end and said, oh, here's our ritual. No, that was not the ritual, not by a long shot. And I wrote it in like kind of screenplay format, so you can see like the stage directions and so forth that go along with the ritual lines that they speak and all of that. And I'm telling you, you can take this to the bank. You read this, your jaw will drop as to how they conduct themselves in lodge. Most people will probably go, oh my gosh, this is so homo that, I mean, seriously, it's like you're waiting for the line like, okay, take me to the red room, Mr. Gray. It's that bad. My hand to God, it's that bad. And it's no wonder that when I got into that prominent position that they naturally assumed I was some sort of high-class callboy or something. And when I told them, no, I'm sorry, I sit and have black-tie dinners at tables next to your wives, I'm not willing to do something like this, I have scruples, that's when the problems started. In 2010, that is why I left, because of sexual harassment. Then in 2012, I wrote the first book because of gang stalking. And now, because it's continued on and on 5 years after all of that, I've now written a new book, hitting them where it hurts the most. I'm going for the nut shot. Their precious secret ritual, completely laid bare.
Well, thank you for coming on, and that is the end of our show. Again, his book is called
Freemasonry's, with an apostrophe in it, plural, Freemasonry's Filthy Rituals. and it is on iBooks in iTunes, and you can find me on Facebook under James Robert Wright. I'm the guy with the profile picture with blonde hair, blue eyes. It says I'm from Dallas, lives in Los Angeles, pretty easy to find. In the subtitle it says Spencer Saxe-Wittenberg is my family name, so you can't miss it. I also have an old website. It's dialmformason.weebly.com, which you can find links to my social media on there as well. And then, of course, on my Facebook, the recent posts will link to the iTunes where you can buy the book, or the GoFundMe where you can donate, and you have my word that I will email you a PDF copy of the book. And, I mean, seriously, I feel very passionately about this, so I speak very, boisterously, and that, and also because I just had oral surgery. So forgive my loud tone of voice, but seriously, if there's anybody out there who's in a position to help, I can't express in words how much I need it. My life is in a shambles, and because of them. It's not like I did this to me. It's not like I've made mistakes, I've made bad decisions, or I've broken the law, or whatever. This is a result of leaving a cult, and I need all the help and support I can get, because it never ends. My saying for them is, round and round we go, where it stops, nobody knows.
Well, on that note, we're going to have to say good night to everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Again, thanks for coming on the show, James, and we'll have to do it again.
Thank you so much, Cathy. You were so gracious, and anytime you like. In 2 weeks, I will be speaking a lot better after I do my speech therapy from the surgery, and I'm always happy to explain this to the public as much as possible so that they understand as much as possible. Once upon a time, real quick, in the 1800s, we actually had a political party called the Anti-Mason Party. That should come back, because these guys are out of control, and I'll leave that as my parting statement.
All right. On that note, good night, everyone. Have a great week, and I hope your lives are filled with joy. Aloha.
Thank you, Cathy.
Good night.
Good night.